Except for when you try to use administrative law and everything, they're not.
Right, well, of course, and we know that. But see, that's the key, because we've now come to a point of being educated enough to use it in our benefit, because it does work in our benefit, as does admiralty, if we use it properly. Okay, so what we're doing is we're pushing up against them, and we're forcing them to now break even their legal codes. And that's what the breakdown of their system is, and that is what the value of everything that's been done in the last 20 years. It may not appear like we're getting remedy, but we are, because we're forcing them to go tilt. Okay? Because if you're ignorant and you don't know, they can, in their minds, justify, well, you accepted the contract.
I'm thinking aloud, but did you go back to what you said about the United Nations? You said it was the United Nations of debtors.
The UN was established in 1944. Every original founding member of the United Nations was in bankruptcy.
Every single one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just thinking aloud, but I'd like to talk to you then about Agenda 21, because, which is now finally going public, because that would make sense then on them needing to relieve some debt. Agenda 21 would be a perfect, sustainable development would be a perfect way for them to get out of it, help them get out of debt. I'd like to talk to you about that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but I'd like to talk to you about it.
So, so the 1899 belligerent treaty establishing recognition of the belligerent, then the United States establishing that the U.S. citizen was a belligerent, and that could be in a state of perpetual war or mixed war. And that's basically how they get around that issue. Can they be in martial law or martial rule? Now, another very key thing, these are major pieces, take a lot of study and understanding. I'm trying to just give you a basic framework. One other major piece that I discovered along the way.
Oh, bless you.
All right, let's see.
4 is good.
Okay. Is sweat, baby, sweat. One that you probably, almost everybody has heard, maybe Kevin has heard of this. Something called the Judicature Act.
Yes.
Okay, you heard of that?
I think I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Could you say
Spelled
it
Judicature, Judicature, or Judicature laws, Judicature acts. They were primarily passed in California, New York, and London. Okay, and in effect, they merged law and equity. They created a hybrid that then became the basis for them to create civil codes. Okay.
Can I make a quick comment on that?
Sure.
I don't know if any of you are familiar with Christian Walters and what his work has been in trust technology, but there is a distinct difference. There's a Maxey Centers case that talks about it out of Florida. The procedure was merged, but the substance is still separate.
Yeah,
and that can be
which is your
exploited.
capacity to reestablish your own law, which is really where this is leading to. That's what we're doing in this republic, is reestablishing our law. We've already done it. It only needs to get to a point of capacity for that key word, enforcement. We're getting there. We may not be there yet, but there are two things that we need to do. Quit dividing ourselves, and just persist and continue forward and complete it. You know, which is really the theme of what I'm trying to say here. The rest is, you know, of all these things, these squibbles and squabbles and, you know, personality issues, is our own self-defeating by divide and conquer. You know, and if you listen really close, you'll hear something underlying it all, which is the masters of the game in London and Rome and Washington laughing their asses off. Look at these idiots dividing and conquering themselves. So let me get back to what I want to say, but let me re-emphasize it. We are conquering ourselves by the idiocy of our own dividing. Where we're 98% in agreement, we're using the 2% where we're not, whether that's religion or personality or whatever it is, to divide ourselves. If we keep doing it, we're going to conquer ourselves, or allow ourselves to be conquered. So let's just focus on what binds us and unifies us. So just to finish, the Judicature Acts, they combined law and equity. Law belongs to the people. It is the law of the land. That's the whole thing, and it means literally of the land. And when you're lifted off of the land into equity, you have no unalienable rights. You have no substance, as you're saying. You have contracted into a different law form. Law form of equity is based on the contract. Okay, we've all been contracted over and over and over and again, and so the judge looks at and says, "What's the contract here?" Okay, and exactly what you said is you can remove yourself from the presumption of merger and go back to the substance, but you have to properly and timely object, remove consent, and stand on your law. And that's it. That's what we're doing collectively, and that's the secret of what you need to do if you find yourself in court, among other things. So the Judicature Act did a merger, as you said, and allowed for a presumption if it's acted upon or it's not objected to. On the basis of that, civil code could be established. And what's the purpose of civil code? Let's first understand what something called the civitas is. C-I-V-I-T-U-S. The civitas, it comes from Rome, and it's called the civil body. We could call it the public, in the public arena that we're used to talking about. It's the same thing. The first Civil Rights Acts were put in place by the post-Civil War Congress in 1866. We all grew up thinking civil rights happened in 1964. But civil rights was passed in 1866. Why? To create the first herding of the public into a civil forum. So if they have civil rights, and you hear people all the time, if you're out there and you find yourself saying, "I need my civil rights," you've screwed yourself. You've just reconquered yourself. Why? Because in Rome, the civitas was created for the masses. They did not have substantial rights, unalienable rights, whatever you want to call it. You had civil rights, which were granted by an external authority and were licensed and registered as a privilege that could be taken away. Hang on one second. Okay, so here's where the real twist comes in. Anybody know what the California's called the Golden State, right? What's the name of New York?
The Empire.
Wow, an empire state.
Wow.
Who would imagine that? Did that ever occur to you?
Oh my gosh, no.
Okay, the Empire State Building, right? Okay, it's the Empire State. Anybody want to take a guess which empire we're referring to?
Darth Vader. Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire.
Same thing.
So, the New York Judicature Acts, among all of the rest of what was in there, did a very interesting thing. They attached the Judicature Act of New York to something called the metropolitan, I don't know if that's the right word, but the city of New Orleans.
Oh.